The black card slid across the glass table and stopped inches from her trembling fingers. 24 hours, the man said, not raising his voice. Unlimited. No questions. She didn't touch it. Around them, the office was silent, except for the distant hum of the city far below. Screens along the wall glowed with numbers that never slept. The man who owned those numbers leaned back in his chair, studying her the way he studied markets, cold, precise, detached. Her name was Mara. She was a single mother of two standing in a room that cost more per minute than she earned in a month. "I don't understand," she said finally. Her voice was steady, but only because she forced it to be. "Why me?" The billionaire folded his hands. "Because you asked for help," she swallowed. "I asked for time, a little flexibility on my rent, not this." He gave a thin smile. "Money is time, and I'm curious how people use it when there are no limits." Mara glanced at the card again. Black, heavy, unreal. Her reflection stared back at her from its surface. Tired eyes, cheap shoes, a woman who hadn't slept through the night in years. "Is this a test?" she asked. "Everything is," he replied. "My team will monitor the transactions. No interference. At the end of 24 hours, you return the card. That's it." "And if I don't?" "You will." The confidence in his tone irritated her. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty, the kind that came from always being right. Mara exhaled slowly and picked up the card. The billionaire's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at her. "The clock starts now." She turned and walked out, without another word. As the elevator doors closed, the man leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Let's see who you really are," he murmured. Her first stop was not a boutique, not a dealership, not a hotel. It was a grocery store. When the alert chimed on the billionaire's tablet, he frowned. "Groceries?" An assistant beside him nodded. "Yes, sir. Basic items, bulk." He waved a dismissive hand. "Give it time." Mara moved through the aisles quickly, calculator in hand. Rice, beans, bread, fresh fruit, milk. She added extra where she could, then paused in front of the baby food. She stared at it for a long moment, jaw tightening, then loaded her cart. At checkout, the cashier's eyes widened when the total appeared. Is this okay?" the cashier asked, glancing at the card. Mara nodded. "It's okay." Outside, she loaded the bags into her old car and drove across town, not to her apartment, but to a rundown complex with peeling paint and broken railings. She carried the bags up 3 flights of stairs and knocked. An elderly woman opened the door, eyes widening in shock. "Mara?" "I brought food," Mara said simply. "Why?" "Because you're out." The woman's hand shook as she stepped aside. "You didn't have to." "I know," Mara said. "Eat." Across the city, the billionaire leaned forward in his chair. "She's given it away," he said. "Some of it," the assistant corrected. The billionaire smiled faintly. Phase 1. Guilt spending. By noon, Mara had paid a medical bill at a small clinic. She didn't ask for recognition. She didn't give her name. She stood quietly at the counter until the balance cleared, then walked out. At 1 o'clock, she paid 2 months' rent for a family facing eviction. The father cried. She hugged him and left before it got uncomfortable. Transaction after transaction rolled in. The billionaire's smile faded. "This isn't impulsive," he said. "It's structured." His assistant hesitated. "Sir, she hasn't purchased anything for herself?" "Yet." At 3 p.m., Mara finally went home. Her children stared at the groceries like they were a miracle. "Mom," her son asked, "did you rob a bank?" She laughed for the first time that day. No, eat. While they ate, she sat at the table writing. Slow, careful, each word chosen with intention. That note would matter later. At 5, she drove again, this time to a school supply store. She bought backpacks, shoes, not for her kids. Hers were fine for now, but for others she knew by name. The billionaire stood up from his chair. "Pull her file," he said. "Already did," the assistant replied. "No criminal record, no history of fraud, widowed, 2 children, works 3 jobs." "And debt?" "Medical, education, nothing reckless." The billionaire stared at the screen, unsettled by a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Doubt. At 8 p.m., Mara finally did something unexpected. She walked into a quiet clothing store and bought one dress, just one, simple, dark blue, durable fabric. She paid and left. "That's it?" the billionaire asked. "Yes, sir." He watched the timestamp. 8 hours gone, less than a fraction of the limit used. He exhaled sharply. She's not playing the game. At 10, Mara sat on her bed, card resting on the table beside her. She stared at it like it might speak. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "Hello?" "Why?" the billionaire asked. She stiffened. "Why what?" "Why not take more?" A pause. "Because I don't need more," she said. "I need enough." He was silent. She added quietly, "And because my children are watching." The call ended. Across the city, the billionaire remained standing long after the screen went dark. Something about that sentence refused to let him sit down. The night passed, and the most important hours were still ahead. If this story has you hooked already, don't forget to like the video so more people can find it. Stay with me. What happens next changes everything. The city slept, but Mara didn't. She sat at the small kitchen table long after her children had gone to bed, the black card lying between her and the folded letter she'd been writing all evening. She reread the last line, crossed it out, and started again. Her handwriting was neat but tired, like someone who had learned to be careful with everything, including words. At 2:17 a.m., she stood, picked up the card, and slipped it into her jacket pocket. She drove across town under flickering streetlights, stopping in front of a 24-hour pharmacy. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant and quiet desperation. A man argued softly with the cashier, his voice cracking. "I'll get the rest tomorrow," he said. "Please?" Mara stepped forward. "I've got it." The man turned. "You don't have to." "I know," she said, already handing over the card. Outside, the man wiped his eyes. "Why would you help a stranger?" She shrugged. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't ask." She drove away before he could say more. The alert pinged again. The billionaire rubbed his temples. It was past midnight, yet he hadn't gone home. He hadn't even loosened his tie. "This is charity," he muttered, pure sentiment. But even as he said it, something gnawed at him. Charity usually came with vanity. Cameras, press releases, names carved into buildings. This came with silence. At dawn, Mara stood in line at a bank. She wasn't withdrawing money. She was paying off a small loan, one she'd taken years ago when her husband was still alive, when hope still felt solid. The teller blinked at the cleared balance. "That's it," the teller said. "You're free." Mara smiled, faint but real. "Thank you." At 7:45 a.m., she drove her kids to school. They hugged her tightly before running off. "Mom," her daughter said, turning back, "you're smiling." Mara touched her cheek. "Am I?" By 9, the billionaire had called an emergency meeting. She has 15 hours left, he said. Why hasn't she escalated? One executive shifted in his seat. Maybe she won't. That's impossible, the billionaire snapped. Everyone does. But even as he spoke, a memory surfaced uninvited. His own childhood kitchen, his mother counting coins, the way money had once felt like oxygen. He dismissed it. At noon, Mara made her boldest move yet. She walked into a legal office. An hour later, a debt settlement was completed, not for her, but for 3 families trapped under predatory interest rates. The lawyer stared at her in disbelief. You just erased years of suffering, he said. Mara shook her head. No, I just gave them room to breathe. The billionaire slammed his hand on the desk. She's dismantling problems, he said, not indulging. His assistant hesitated. Sir, what if this isn't about the money? He didn't answer. At 3 p.m, Mara finally did something the billionaire had expected all along. She walked into a car dealership. Salespeople swarmed her like instinct. She listened politely, asked practical questions, then shook her head. I'm not here for myself, she said. I need a van. For? A salesman asked. A shelter, she replied. They've been borrowing one that keeps breaking down. The purchase went through. Clean. Efficient. The billionaire watched the footage in silence. She's reallocating wealth, he whispered. At 5, Mara returned home, cooked dinner, helped with homework. Life, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. At 6:40 p.m., her phone rang again. You're running out of time, the billionaire said. I know, she replied calmly. Most people would be panicking. She smiled to herself. I've been panicking my whole life. There was a pause. Why didn't you buy a house? Because I don't need walls, she said. I need stability. Those aren't the same thing. At 8:59 p.m., Mara walked back into the grocery store. This time, she didn't buy food. She bought gift cards. At 9:30, she delivered them anonymously to hospital nurses, janitors, night guards. The billionaire's voice cracked when he spoke again. You could have changed your life forever. I did, she said softly, just not the way you expected. At 11:30 p.m., Mara sat alone, card on the table. She reread her letter one last time, folded it carefully, and placed it beside the card. Outside, rain began to fall. At 11:58 p.m., she stood. At exactly midnight, she walked back into the same glass tower where it had all begun. The billionaire was waiting. She placed the card on the table. Time's up, she said. He didn't move. Why didn't you keep going? He asked. She met his eyes. Because I didn't want to forget who I am. He stared at the card like it had betrayed him. She slid the letter forward. Read that. He opened it slowly. His hands began to shake. He read the letter once, then again. The billionaire didn't realize he was holding his breath until his chest began to ache. The words were simple, no flattery, no gratitude wrapped in praise, just honesty, raw and unguarded. I didn't use your money to escape my life, the letter said. I used it to fix what keeps breaking people like me. If I had taken more than I needed, my children would learn that power is for taking. I want them to learn it's for choosing. He lowered the papers slowly. Mara stood quietly across from him, hands clasped in front of her. She wasn't defiant. She wasn't proud. She was ready. Ready for judgment, for dismissal, for the door to open and the experiment to end. You didn't even use a quarter of the limit, he said hoarsely.
I didn't see a reason to, she replied. You could have secured your future, your children's future. I did, she said gently. Just not with things. He laughed once, sharply. You know what people like me spend money on when we're bored? She shook her head. Distractions, he said. Noise. Proof that we still matter. She didn't respond. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside him cracked. Do you know why I chose you? She hesitated. Because I asked for help. No, he said, because I expected you to fail. Her shoulders stiffened. I've given money away before, he continued. Grants, donations, foundations. It always ends the same. Dependency, entitlement, waste. His voice lowered. I wanted proof that poverty corrupts, that morality is a luxury. And? She asked. He swallowed. And you made a liar out of me. Silence stretched between them. You know what the worst part is? He added. I watched every transaction, every choice, and at no point did you think about me, not once. She met his gaze. This wasn't about you. That was the moment. The billionaire sat down, hard. He pressed his palms against the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I built an empire believing people are only as good as their incentives, he said quietly. You just destroyed that theory in 24 hours. Mara shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean to. I know, he interrupted. That's what scares me. He looked up at her, eyes glassy. When was the last time someone helped you? She thought for a moment. 6 years ago. A nurse stayed past her shift so my son wouldn't be alone during surgery. What did she get out of it? Nothing. He nodded slowly, like a student finally understanding the lesson. I used to think kindness was inefficient. She smiled sadly. So does the world. He stood abruptly and walked to the window. The city stretched endlessly below, lights, motion, ambition. He'd owned it for decades, yet for the first time, it felt small. I tracked every dollar you spent, he said without turning. Do you know what surprised me the most? What? You never tried to impress anyone. She shrugged. Impressing people is expensive. He let out a broken laugh. You're right. He turned back to her. If I offered you a job, would you take it? She blinked. Doing what? Helping me fix what I've been doing wrong. She shook her head immediately. I can't. My kids, I know, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to work for me. I'm asking you to teach me.
She stared at him. You don't need me. Yes, he said firmly. I do. He walked back to the table and slid a document toward her. This is a foundation charter. It's funded, fully. No press, no naming rights. She frowned. Then why show me? Because I want you to run it, he said, on your terms. Her breath caught. I don't have the qualifications. You have the character. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't do this for... I know, he said again. That's why it has to be you. She hesitated. What's the catch? He shook his head. No catch. Just one rule. She waited. Never let me forget today. Her voice trembled. I won't.
They stood there, two people from opposite ends of the world, bound by something neither had expected. Outside, the rain stopped. Mara picked up the empty envelope that had once held the card. "What happens now?" He took a deep breath. "Now I start paying attention." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "Mara?" She looked back. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. "Do something with it." The doors closed behind her. The billionaire remained standing long after she was gone, the letter clutched in his hand, tears finally slipping free. The office felt different after she left. Not quieter, just honest. The billionaire sat alone, the letter still in his hands, reading it again as if the words might change. They didn't. They stayed stubbornly simple, stubbornly true. He realized something unsettling then. For the first time in years, no one was trying to sell him anything. No admiration, no loyalty, no obedience, just truth. He looked at the black card on the table. For decades, that card had been an extension of his will. Doors opened, rules bent, people changed. And yet in 24 hours, one woman had reduced it to what it really was. Plastic. He pressed a button on his desk. "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day." "Sir?" his assistant replied. "All of them." A pause. "Yes, sir." He stood and walked to the window again, but this time he didn't look down at the city. He looked inward, somewhere he hadn't visited in a long time. He remembered his father's hands, calloused, shaking as he signed eviction papers. He remembered his mother apologizing for things that were never her fault. Somewhere along the climb, he had decided feelings were liabilities. Mara had proven they were assets. That evening, she returned home to her children. They noticed it immediately. "You look tired," her son said. She smiled and pulled him into a hug. "Good tired." "Did you win?" her daughter asked. Mara paused. "I think we all did." She cooked dinner like every other night. No music, no celebration, just routine, stability. The kind she'd always valued more than spectacle. The next morning, the first transfer went through. Then the second. Then the third. By noon, a quiet fund existed, one that didn't announce itself, didn't advertise, didn't congratulate donors. It paid debts quietly. It fixed problems before they became tragedies. And at the top of the documents was a single line: Oversight, Independent Community Council. Mara never took a salary she didn't need. She never moved into a bigger apartment. She never changed her phone. But things around her changed. The shelter got its van, and then another. Families stayed housed. Clinics stayed open. Children stayed in school. And the billionaire? He started showing up. Not to galas, not to panels. To meetings he'd never attended before, listening more than speaking, asking questions he once thought beneath him. One afternoon, months later, he stood quietly at the back of a small community center while Mara spoke to a group of volunteers. "This isn't about saving people," she said. "It's about removing the weight so they can stand on their own." He felt his throat tighten. After the meeting, he approached her. "You've changed more lives in 6 months than I did in 30 years. She looked at him carefully. "No, I just reminded you what you could do." He nodded. "You know, people still ask me why I don't put my name on any of this." "And what do you tell them?" "That the name doesn't matter." She smiled.
That's progress. Years later, when an interviewer finally asked him what changed everything, he didn't mention markets or mentors or strategy. He said, "A woman once showed me what unlimited money can't buy." Back in her apartment, Mara kept the envelope from that night in a drawer. Empty, ordinary, powerful. Sometimes, when life felt heavy again, as it always does, she took it out and remembered that even a single day used well could echo forever. And somewhere in the city, a billionaire learned to cry again. Not because he lost something, but because he found it. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video. It really helps more people see stories like this. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, unforgettable stories. And comment below, what would you do with unlimited money for 24 hours? Because sometimes, the real test isn't how much you can take, it's how much good you choose to leave behind.